I looked back, both mentally and then physically, upon a dialogue that I had had with Maria one night over text. I deplore texting at times like this, but it was imperative that I assert myself. My family had all but betrayed me. Maria and Pumpkin had always been the only two whom I could trust and love. And over the time I had spent away from college and home, or away from home and college, especially at debate tournaments, I had developed the creeping suspicion that, quite apart from surrendering herself in moments of adolescent anguish to my loving arms, her only defense against my parents' tyranny, their capitalistic conceit, their bloated, pompous devotion to the middle-class way of life, their wasted dreams sold for the sterility of this mythic scientific method, with its unchecked malice and sadism. Instead, she would side with them against me. The thought seemed unreal, but here it was. I had to painfully confront my obligation to text her from Carmel Mountain Plaza, when I found that my phone could not contain any more photographs. I had failed you. Here is a moment that you deserved, a light in the darkness between lovers, or a way of earning back your love, though I always knew it to be there, and I could not do it without potential sacrifice to the other materials. My grievous error had been that I had failed to tell Maria to get off the computer for only a few minutes. Only a few would have been enough time to secure the photographs that were my burden and responsibility, by virtue of an upload on the computer. But the aggression in Maria's eyes showed me, where her allegiance lay. She, like father, believed that simply because I did not commit myself to the rat trap of employment, I deserved no access to this family computer. She would go on over the course of that brief but tormented correspondence to insist that the computer belonged to everyone, but she could not fool me with egalitarian pretense and conceit. Father had explicitly denied our mutual ownership of it, as well as our equality of rights. Her words could only mask that power relationship. I know that you have described me as narcissistic in fits of temper, but I shall recall what you told me in a dream, to surrender shame. I shall feel no shame for calling out my sister in what you did. So many months I have labored to keep you alive. Every gesture was precise. Any conflict of interest must have, by necessity, at its root a villain. And I have piously refused to be in the wrong for many years now. You call me manipulative, but I shall not surrender my voice of protest. Neither shall I have it echoed back to me in the form of naive leveling, as though I had cried into a vacant cave. I have no regrets for others' cruelty. They systematically exclude me in conspiracy with one another, and when I protest, I accrue all the blame of accusations, and by accusations of hypocrisy. But my voice of protest will subvert them, if only in my mind. I would not have peace with them now, were it not for my courage in standing up to the ones I love. Anger frees energy, and was it not the following day that Maria invited me again for what might have been the first time in months to watch cartoons with her? Demand perfection of self, and you must demand it of others, for perfection cannot flourish in an imperfect world. I will not be manipulated to believe myself to be a manipulator. So many manipulators pretend towards virtue, and I believe them. Am I not just as innocent in citing their example? I bring honesty to what they do in a fiction and a dream of passion. At root I always meant well. I meant desperately to protect you. I meant as desperately to protect Maria. I can only hope I saved you both from yourselves. It is the least I can ask for myself. I love you. Of course, my attitude at present is much more optimistic. I tend to fear being too temperamentally optimistic to such an extreme that my cynicism is egregious. I know now that some excuses can be permitted on epistemological grounds, and this is to be substituted for blame. People have differing personalities and motives. Pisces is the most selfless of the signs. Jesus represents it, hence the Jesus fish. Yet the other signs interpret it to be selfish, in part because they are, and in part because they cannot comprehend the purity of idealism that guides Pisces to such extremes. They can only think Pisces to be extremely selfish. This can only be by virtue of extrapolating their own selfishness. If Pisces is generous, he cannot believe that they might accuse him of even the most marginal self-service. Even if he underestimates their accusation, especially in its practical consequences, he is profoundly and disproportionately wounded by it. If Pisces decides to be less generous, he will see the selfishness of other signs and stand in awe of it. He cannot understand why people would settle for propriety, ethical egoism, and capitalism when utopia looms around every corner of possibility. The isolation is natural. The thing to remember is that Pisces does mean well, genuinely, and usually more so than anyone else. It would be wrong to misconstrue his caring as self-love. Everything is religious duty.